People say dolls only move in horror movies. But if that's true, then you tell me, how did a porcelain doll with stitched lips manage to cry when no one else was home? Because this story isn't about a doll that moves. It's about a doll that waits, a doll that listens, a doll that only cries when you're completely, painfully alone. And I didn't believe it, not until the night I heard the sobbing coming from my bedroom, a room I had locked, a room where the doll sat facing the wall, exactly where I left her.
What matters is what happened 3 months ago, when I moved into my grandmother's old house. She had passed away unexpectedly, leaving behind a house filled with dust, memories, and things that probably should have been thrown away decades ago. But my family insisted I clean it out alone. They didn't want to step inside ever again. On my first night there, I discovered something in the attic. Something wrapped in a faded white blanket, as if someone wanted to hide it or protect others from it. A porcelain doll. Her face was pale and cracked along the cheeks. Her eyes were glassy, too realistic, too human. Her lips were sewn shut with red thread, as if she wasn't allowed to speak. But her tears were painted, almost like someone tried to capture the exact moment a child realized something horrible. I should have left her there. But the thing is, Grandma was sentimental. She kept everything. So I placed the doll on my dresser, facing the window, hoping the sunlight would make her look less sad. Around 1:30 a.m. when I first heard it. A thin, distant sound, so soft I almost thought it was in my head. Hick, hick. A soft whimper, a child crying. I froze in bed. There were no children nearby, no TVs on, no radios. Just me and the house that felt too big for one person. I held my breath and listened again. Hick, hick. And then the sound stopped. I didn't sleep that night, but when the sun finally rose, everything felt normal again. Except the doll. She wasn't facing the window anymore. She was turned toward me, as if she had watched me all night long.
I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was stress, imagination, the loneliness of being in an empty house. But the crying returned. This time it was louder, clearer. Hick, hick. It sounded like the kind of crying where someone tries to stay quiet because they're afraid. The sound came from my dresser, from the doll. I didn't want to look at her, but I had to. Her head was tilted slightly downward, like she was crying into her lap, and something wet was dripping from her chin. The painted tears were suddenly darker, glossy, fresh, almost real. I turned on every light in the room, grabbed the doll, and locked her in the hallway closet. The crying stopped instantly. But as I walked back to my bed, I stepped on something cold, something small. A tear. A real tear. I tried to sleep again, but around 3 a.m., a new sound began. Not crying. Scratching. The sound of tiny fingers scraping against wood. Slow, deliberate, unmistakable. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Coming from the hallway closet. The same closet where I locked the doll. I didn't go near it. I couldn't. But the scratching continued until sunrise. I stayed awake the entire night, listening to the soft scraping behind the door. When morning finally came, the house felt too quiet. I slowly opened the closet door. The doll was sitting exactly where I left her, except now, her lips were no longer sewn shut. The red thread was lying on the floor, cut clean, and the doll's mouth was slightly open, just enough for a whisper to escape. Around noon, a woman knocked on the door. She was in her 70s, with trembling hands and wide, fearful eyes. "Is the doll here?" she asked immediately. I didn't even ask how she knew. I just nodded. She stepped inside, whispering to herself, "I knew she'd find another one. I knew it." She told me she was my grandmother's closest friend, and that the doll originally belonged to her daughter, Emily. Emily died when she was 8, not from illness, not from an accident. She died from fear, the old woman whispered. She kept saying the doll cried at night, kept saying she could hear someone calling her name when the house was quiet, but no one believed her. She looked at me,
her voice shaking. "That doll, it doesn't cry because she's sad. It cries because it remembers." And then she told me something that made my stomach twist. The doll cries when it's alone, because something else cries with it. I told her I heard the crying. I told her the lips had been sewn shut and were now open. She went pale. "She's trying to speak again," the old woman whispered. "She hasn't done that in years." The warning.
Before leaving, she grabbed my arm. "Whatever you do, never let the doll be alone at night. The crying will turn into something worse." "What?" I asked. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. "He will follow the sound." I wanted to ask who he was, but the woman left too quickly. I didn't see her again.